Alright, hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the Sentinels because recently you can kind of use whatever Sentinel you want, so I want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages to each of them. Let's just get started. And we're just going to go kind of in order here. So, Carrier. Obviously, Carrier used to be the choice because of Vacuum, but now Vacuum is across all of the Sentinels. So, Vacuum's new precept, or Carrier's new precept, as it were, is Ammo Case, which gives you 25% more ammo capacity on all your weapons, which is decent, and also functions as an ammo conversion for pistols and rifles at a 25% rate, and 100% conversion for shotguns and snipers, which is pretty solid. It can alleviate the ammo concerns of a lot of different weapons to a pretty reasonable degree, considering it's a Sentinel. Pretty solid. Along with that, Carrier Prime is still the Sentinel that is the hardest to take down, so keeping your Vacuum around for longer is nice. Mostly in higher levels is that a concern, though, and it's worth noting that across all of the Sentinels, I would suggest never bringing their gun outside of leveling it. The reason for that is if your Sentinel is firing its gun, it's drawing more threat to itself, which gets it killed faster. So because the guns don't really make a huge amount of difference, with the minor consideration for Sweeper, which comes with Carrier, being a relatively high status shotgun that can put blast on, kind of a minor CC consideration, but not using a weapon on your Sentinel, I think, is the correct choice if you want to have your Sentinel around for a much longer period of time, because they will draw significantly less threat to themselves. Moving on, we've got Death Cube. So, Death Cube is the worst of all of the Sentinels, I think, right now. He has a 4-meter range on his precept that is just damage. It does 900 damage, which is basically nothing. And it has a 30-second cooldown, which is wholly unacceptable, because that is nothing. Basically, Death Cube should have no cooldown, and any enemy that is within 4 meters should be constantly taking 900 damage. That would be the only thing that could make this worthwhile. A 30-second cooldown on that ability is absolutely ridiculous. Completely unusable, and as much as I like how Death Cube looks, and the skin is fucking fantastic, never gonna make up that difference without a completely different ability, because holy shit. Moving on, we've got Diriga. Diriga has some of the same types of concerns in that his CC is inconsistent. He's got the Electro Pulse and such, but it's just not... It just doesn't really do it. And, like, the range of Diriga can be okay for his gun, but again, you're drawing threat to your Sentinel, which is not a good thing, and he just doesn't have a lot going on. His CC's not consistent enough, and it doesn't have a large enough range for it to really be worthwhile, in my opinion, of course. Moving on, we've got Jin. This is kind of another stinker, unfortunately. Jin's Fatal Attraction has a 24-meter range. You have to have 2 enemies within that range for him to activate it, and it is a 5-second stun. Downside, it has a 30-second cooldown for a 5-second stun, which is really not that great, considering Jin will often just decide not to use this. So you can't count on it because you can't be activating it when you want it, so there's not a whole lot for Jin to do. Couple that with him not being like particularly tough in any special way, and he just looks really cool. Like, this skin that came out for him is fantastic, and I love it, but there's no real reason to use Jin, unfortunately. Helios, on the other hand, on the upside, I think Helios is up there with Carrier Prime if you're the kind of person like me who is a kind of completionist. So, obviously, Helios will scan things for you. He is just like, obviously, along with Jin, he's kind of minimum tankiness, but as long as you don't put a weapon on him, he draws significantly less threat and can survive for a pretty reasonable amount of time, barring any significant AoE missions. So with that, he's filling up your codex, which is awesome. It's great for just like getting a huge amount of initial completion on your codex, so you don't have to sit in missions and scan. Beyond that, he has the Detect Vulnerability mod from Simaris, which makes it so that he can put spots on enemies that give you like 275% extra damage, which is okay. It's only on one enemy at a time, and it'll last 10 seconds, and it takes 2 seconds for him to put it onto an enemy, which is kind of just a bonus thing. It's not really going to make any huge differences, but it's better than, like, Death Cube, for example, because it's amplifying your damage as opposed to being low damage coming from Helios. So, once again, just having the kind of overall supportness of Helios is really, really great. especially for people like me who want to complete their codex. It is like the single best way to get like a huge chunk of your codex done. And also on the upside, we've got Prisma Shade. So Prisma Shade is a little bit tougher than a lot of the other Sentinels, and Shade's ability for invisibility is actually pretty solid. It can save you in a lot of situations where you might otherwise die. Basically, if an enemy is within 10 meters of you, you have like infinite invisibility as long as you're not attacking and standing by that enemy, which means that you can kind of just do whatever you want. And also worth noting that Warframe abilities don't break the invisibility, so there's kind of some weird strategies you can do with keeping like an enemy alive and near you to do some weird stuff with Shade. But in most cases, it's going to be like your teammate is surrounded and you can just walk up to them while they're downed and res them, because now you're invisible because all those enemies are there as well. Things like that make Shade actually really good, and just a solid companion. Also, coupled with that, his invisibility only has a 10-second cooldown, which, whenever you need the invisibility, it's not really going to be a thing that you notice, the cooldown. So, just solid overall. Shade he's actually just totally fine. He's got a really solid ability that can help you in the situations that actually matter. So, we've only got one more to talk about, and that's Worm. And before we talk about Worm's ability, I'm going to point out a thing that I didn't notice before I started kind of looking at the Sentinels closer, because Vacuum got changed. And the interesting thing here is that Worm, normal, has 200 health, and Worm Prime has 100 health, which is real strange. And I don't know if that's correct, because it feels like the Primes are just an upgrade usually, and we're kind of along that path. Like if we take Carrier, like 100, 250, that, these are all higher. So maybe Worm Prime needs a little bit of a tiny buff, but while we're talking about Worm, his ability, Crowd Dispersion, is actually a lot better than I gave it credit for compared to a lot of the other Sentinels. So if he had that extra 100 health, he would actually be pretty hard to take down, kind of comparable to where Carrier Prime is. And along with that, he has, in a 10-meter area, a hard knockdown, as long as there are 2 enemies within that area, which is pretty good. And it's got a 15-second cooldown, which is actually not that bad. Obviously, that is like about half of the severe cooldowns that Death Cube and Jin have. So Worm actually comes out looking pretty solid, and personally, he's kind of one of my favorite looking designs. Worm Prime, I think, looks absolutely fantastic. But Crowd Dispersion actually is solid, which really surprised me whenever I was out and testing it, because it's a good hard knockdown that you can count on to generally be ready whenever you jump into a fray of enemies, which is pretty surprising. So if I had to rank these Sentinels in order of like usefulness to myself, because I think that these new uses for the Sentinels are kind of niche outside of some that are just bad, like Death Cube, who needs a look, probably needs a pretty significant buff to get to like kind of the area where all the other Sentinels are, I would say, even Jin. But I think the top 3 Sentinels are probably Helios, Carrier, and actually Worm, which really surprised me. I think Worm and Shade are actually incredibly close, but I really value the hard knockdown. While I think a lot of other people are going to value the invisibility, which I just don't put a lot of weight on personally, it's still really, really good. But yeah, I think Helios and Carrier are taking those top spots, but Shade and Worm are real close runner-ups. And that's kind of an overview of how Sentinels are for anyone that was looking to make a decision on them. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed this.